Hey everyone, let's dive into this explainer and really unpack the blueprint of a total business giant's downfall. This isn't just a story about cell phones. It's actually a massive, fascinating case study in market dominance, corporate hubris, and honestly, how fast a multi-billion-dollar empire can literally evaporate into thin air.
I want you to picture the world just a couple of decades ago. Imagine a time when one single company commanded over half of the entire global mobile phone market, over 50%. At their peak, we're talking about hundreds of millions of devices sold. They were effectively the standard global utility for human communication. Think about it. If you walked into a crowded room, sat on a train, or just strolled down any street anywhere in the world, more than 1 out of every 2 people holding a phone was holding a Nokia. Absolutely wild.
And that brings us to the massive question that business historians are still dissecting today. How on earth did the undisputed king of mobile lose absolutely everything to a single fatal blind spot? Let's figure it out.
Part 1. The Unstoppable Rise, Building an Empire. So, getting right into it, Nokia's humble origins actually started way back in 1865 as just a single paper mill operation in Finland. But they executed this incredibly flawless strategic pivot into electronics. They expanded globally, and by the late 1990s and early 2000s, they utterly dominated the mobile market. They read the early market perfectly and became the undisputed standard for mobile communication everywhere.
And man, we all remember those iconic devices, right? The legendary 3310 and the 1100. These weren't just phones, they were basically indestructible cultural touchstones that gave us endless hours of playing Snake. That rock-solid hardware generated universal trust and just incredible customer loyalty. People absolutely relied on Nokia.
Part 2. The billion-dollar mistake, hubris, and the smartphone.
Well, the entire technological landscape shifted practically overnight in 2007. The smartphone revolution was sparked by the historic launch of the iPhone, which was then followed super rapidly by the rise of Android. The very definition of what a mobile phone even was completely transformed. It was no longer just about physical, clicky keyboards and closed systems for making simple calls. Suddenly, it was about holding a powerful computer right in your pocket, complete with multi-touch glass screens and these huge, expansive app ecosystems.
Now, here is where it all went wrong. Nokia fatally underestimated this massive shift by desperately clinging to Symbian. That was their aging, clunky operating system built for physical keyboards, not fluid touchscreens. So, while Apple and Android were offering these lightning-fast, highly intuitive software experiences, Nokia kind of just thought the battle was still all about hardware. They completely missed that the war had already shifted to software and user experience.
But, the technology gap was really only half the problem. Internally, Nokia had evolved into a giant bureaucratic maze. Middle managers were reportedly terrified, like literally scared to share bad news with top executives about just how far ahead Apple actually was. This created a toxic culture of hubris that completely blinded leadership to the reality of the threat. Their massive size, which used to be their greatest weapon, had essentially become their fatal flaw.
Part 3. The rapid collapse. A giant falls.
The downward spiral that followed was genuinely terrifying to watch. In just a handful of years, Nokia hemorrhaged that massive 50% market share all the way down to single digits, and their profits completely vanished. It's a staggering reality check of exactly how incredibly fast consumers will abandon a beloved brand if it fails to meet their new expectations.
And then, the final nail in the coffin came just a few years later in 2013. This was the sobering, totally devastating year that Nokia's struggling mobile phone business was officially acquired by Microsoft. A company that once commanded over half the globe's mobile market just simply couldn't survive on its own anymore.
From owning the world to losing it all, the absolute titan of mobile communications was officially reduced to a textbook example of business failure. I mean, it's a cautionary tale taught in boardrooms all over the world today.
Part 4. Lessons for Survival, Avoiding the Nokia Trap.
So what are the vital steps to avoid this kind of failure in your own ventures? First up, you must never ignore innovation, even if it directly threatens your current comfortable business model. Second, constantly listen to your customers. And I mean really listen to what they want, right now, not what they wanted yesterday. And third, you have got to adapt with lightning speed. Because, as we just saw, technology absolutely waits for no one.
The big overarching rule you really have to remember is this. Just because you're winning today does not mean you are protected tomorrow. In fact, your past success is very often the exact thing that blinds you to future disruption.
It really all boils down to this incredibly powerful idea. Nokia didn't fail because it lacked talent. It failed because it believed yesterday's success would protect tomorrow's future. In business, the biggest risk isn't the competition. It's refusing to change.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to look closely at your own projects, your own business, or even just your own skill sets. Where might you be coasting on yesterday's success? And more importantly, are you refusing to change?